Hello everyone, how are you all doing? I hope you're having a wonderful day. In my last video, which I will link in the description box below and somewhere on screen if I can, I spoke about how my channel would be undergoing a bit of a change. And one of the things that I wanted to do in that change was speak more about mental health and in particular bipolar and psychosis. So that is what I'm going to do today. I am going to talk about the psychosis side of things. Now obviously it is a very complex mental health disorder and there is lots of aspects to cover when it comes to this topic. So I think it makes sense for me to do several videos on psychosis instead of trying to cram everything into one video and just overloading you with information. So for today I am just going to give a general overview of psychosis, and then in separate videos I will talk about my hallucinations and what they are, my delusions and what they are, my triggers, my paranoia, etc. If there's anything in particular that you would like to know about psychosis, then please do just leave a comment. No topic is off limits. I'm happy to try and cover everything. So let's start with the dictionary definition of psychosis, shall we? I actually have it written down here. A severe mental disorder in which thought and emotions are so impaired that contact is lost with external reality. Yeah, I would say that's pretty accurate, but obviously that is a pretty bog standard definition. It doesn't go into detail, and I think to truly understand something you have to know as much about it as possible. Psychosis takes on a number of forms. It can be hallucinations, which can be auditory, so you hear things, or visual, where you see things. It can be delusions, where you develop ideas about yourself or the world around you that are very real to you, but ultimately complete nonsense. And it can be paranoia, which I think is pretty self-explanatory. Some people have one or two of these forms of psychosis. Some people have all four. I have all four. I have auditory hallucinations and visual hallucinations, and sometimes both together. And I have delusions and paranoia. A lot of the time psychosis is very negative, but that's not to say that you can't have positive hallucinations and delusions, etc. as well. But ultimately it is all very dangerous because you have lost the capacity to be able to tell the difference between reality and fiction, and that is not an ideal situation to be in. I would say that I have about 85% negative hallucinations and delusions, etc., and 15% positive. Some are comforting hallucinations, but the majority are horrible and they scare me. One thing I want to make very clear in this video is that medication does exist for psychosis. It's not a cure, but it can help. For me, it got rid of a lot of the hallucinations, etc., but not 100%. I still have hallucinations and delusions and paranoia, etc. on a weekly basis, but the main thing that the medication did for me is that it helped me to rationalize and to be able to tell myself that what I'm seeing and hearing and believing is not necessarily real. Whereas before I was on the medication, everything felt real, no matter how bizarre it now sounds. So now I'm going to give you a very basic overview of my hallucinations, paranoia and delusion. I will talk about them in detail in separate videos. For me, they all kind of tied into one another. So I would have hallucinations where I could see and hear things like demons and ghosts, etc. And then my delusions would allow me to believe that the reason that I was seeing and hearing these things was because it was my responsibility to get rid of them. And then my paranoia would tie into that because I would be paranoid that people would find out about this and I would be somehow condemned for this. And then obviously on top of that there was the other paranoia that comes with living with the notion that at any point of any day you could suddenly see or hear things that are very frightening. I spent a lot of years living on edge. It was a constant stress, and I think it played a huge part in my anxiety, because even now I have this constant worry that something is going to happen that triggers me, and I just go into a downward spiral and I wind up back in that place where I can't tell the difference between what's in my head and what is real life. And that brings me to triggers, and again I will do an in-depth video on my own personal triggers, what they are, how that all works, etc. But for now, let me just give you the basics. There are certain things that can trigger hallucinations and delusions, etc. Much like certain things can trigger a manic episode or a depressive episode with my bipolar disorder. And these can be things like certain words, certain scenarios, sounds, so like a piece of music, books, TV shows, etc. For me, there is a mix of a few things that are surefire triggers, and they will either make me hallucinate or they will really upset me and remind me of that period of time where I wasn't medicated and where life was basically a living hell. And yes, I did say that books and TV shows can be triggers. Certain TV shows can be very triggering for me because I do watch a lot of TV, and a few of my hallucinations and delusions tie into certain TV shows. This is actually pretty common in a lot of mental health disorders, but especially those in which you lose touch with reality. You could identify with a character on a TV show and their abilities, and then boom, done. You've got a fresh delusion or hallucination. It's very easy to get wrapped up in the fantasy land that plays out on TV when you're basically living in your own fantasy land. The final thing that I want to say in this brief summary of psychosis is that you are not alone if you do have this. I know that it can feel that way because there is a very limited percentage of the population that deal with psychosis, but we do exist, and I'm going to do my best to raise awareness and educate people about this mental health disorder. So if you would like to learn more about psychosis and what my personal psychosis entails, then please do subscribe and hit the little bell so that you're notified when I put out new videos. You can also follow me on social media to keep up to date with when videos will be put out and delays, etc. I hope that this video shed a bit of light on a topic that isn't really spoken about a lot. I hope that you enjoyed it and maybe learned something from it, and I hope to see you guys in future videos. Thank you very much for watching.